So in this video, I'm going to be talking about BPD and I'm going to be discussing the topic, is BPD really just manipulation or is it something else? Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. For those who are new here, my name is Deanna and I make mental health videos.
And trying to remain so strong, I know it's good if I'm wrong, I got it, I gotta go, run.
So first of all, you may all be kind of wondering what BPD is. I'm going to briefly explain it, but I do actually have a video on what BPD is and I will leave that in the card above. But BPD is basically a collection of symptoms that also they overlap with other disorders. So this is also my understanding of the condition. You know, I am currently diagnosed with it, hence why I'm talking about it from my perspective. So BPD can include things like mood swings, it can include things like suicide attempts and self-harm and all bits and pieces, but with BPD, you've got all these symptoms, and people can even get things like delusions and hallucinations and things like that. So you can kind of probably start to understand why BPD can overlap or be misdiagnosed. This is kind of the current struggle that I'm facing. The fact that my current diagnosis is complex post-traumatic stress disorder and BPD, but I have never really agreed with the whole BPD diagnosis. I really disagree with it. I do not think I ever had BPD. I really do think that I have something more like autism or ADHD in comparison to BPD. I do fully though agree with the complex PTSD because your girl has some really significant traumas. So I'm now going to move on to talk about the common BPD stigmas and like from what I've heard. So the biggest and most common one that I've heard is
BPD people are just manipulative.
and coming from somebody who has been stigmatized through this, and coming from somebody who has even had doctors that stigmatize, like I've had doctors basically refuse to admit me to a psych ward when I completely and obviously needed it because I had the diagnosis of BPD.
So I just wanted to clarify and explain how this actually fits into manipulation. And he would say that I was only trying to manipulate my way into a psych ward admission.
The doctor admitted, I'm not going to admit you because you've got BPD. And he was only there to assess me and to make sure that I was safe, when I actually wasn't safe, by the way, but he was just there to do his job and to basically just assess me and do the paperwork and things like that and just say that he spoke to me. He walked on into the room and basically goes, right, I'm not going to admit you, so you can just get that in your head. And I was like, wait, what? So not even a hello. And that was probably the worst. Actually, no, I don't know about that. It was the worst because I was also told I was homeless once. But getting off topic. So irregardless of whether I keep the diagnosis of BPD, I'm still going to stick by the BPD people with BPD are not manipulative, because at the end of the day, BPD is unhealed trauma. And a lot of people with BPD have been traumatized in some form, some shape or form, or one way or the other. And when you think about that, you know, we didn't ask to be traumatized. We didn't ask to have whatever happened to us happen to us. So why are we getting a double whammy in a way? Like when you think of it of a literal sense, we're being discriminated against because people are having these stigmas against us, but we've only got this diagnosis because we've got unhealed trauma. So we're getting the unhealed trauma that's still unhealed and still causing all these symptoms, but we're also getting stigmatized against. So, you know, it's not fair. The next stigma that I've heard is that BPD people are attention seeking. And while I believe that sometimes this can be true, sometimes it can, like, not necessarily be true, but come across as true because of the way we're acting, it's nearly 9 times out of 10, it is not for attention. So I think that kind of almost feeds into the whole manipulation kind of stigma as well. So every time I've been in A&E for a suicide attempt or for self-harm or something like that, and I'm talking, this was years ago, but you know, every time I've come across something like that, and I've got friends who have got BPD and it is still happening to this day, but whenever I've been in there, I've always had at least one doctor or nurse not understand mental health and turn around to me and either act or say something that is very like stigmatized. So the whole attention seeking, like I actually had one doctor turn around to me and say, you're doing it for attention. And you know, it just comes across as like certain healthcare professionals, like I understand as much as A&E is a physical health place, you know, there still needs to be a certain amount of training and a certain amount of awareness for mental health, because you're going to get people that come in, you know, with suicide attempts, you're going to get people that come in with self-harm, and you need to know how to deal with those sorts of things, because although as much as A&E is mainly for physical health reasons, you're still going to have the physical repercussions of a mental health disorder. I do believe that 9 times out of 10, BPD is not attention seeking, but I understand from a recovered person's perspective how it can come across as that, and I understand that some people can think it's attention seeking because they don't understand, and I can understand why it would come across as that. So I'm now going to talk about another time, very briefly, that I was stigmatised, and I'm going to leave the link in the card above to the actual full version of that story. But one of the particular times I was stigmatised was when I was told I was homeless. And this is probably, like, that video that I made ages ago talking about this story probably doesn't do it justice, but it was built on stigma. I went into A&E following a suicide attempt, and I was put into a side room. I was triaged and discharged in the actual A&E place, and they discharged me because there was no medical reason for me to be there. And so they put me into this side ward in a side room that was like, it was not just me in this room, there was other patients in this room. And then when it got to, I think it was about 1 or 2 in the morning, those other patients had all been moved on and they'd all either been discharged or given a bed. And you've got to think, it's 1 or 2 in the morning. I'm exhausted because I've been in A&E and, well, in the combination of A&E and this ward for over 24 hours, and I'm absolutely exhausted. But because they were so short on beds, I was told that I was not going to get a bed, and that I had to just sit in the chair and try and sleep. Then what happened was the mental health worker came in to assess me, and at one point, she started off and she introduced herself, and she was doing okay to start off with, and then she basically said, well, I'm going to discharge you. And I couldn't understand, after all what I told her, why she was discharging me. And I said I got home to my parents' house, and you know, all the bits and pieces and things like that. And she was like, okay, I'm going to call your mum and I'll discuss it with your mum. And so she called my mum, and my mum basically turned around, and in the best intentions, she turned around and she said, I don't want her home because there's 2 younger siblings in the house. And at the time, my younger siblings were a lot younger, and my mum said, I don't want her having a negative impact on her younger siblings. I'd rather her go somewhere like a hospital or a respite centre or somewhere so she can actually get into a better frame of mind. And my mum had all the best intentions in the world doing that. The lady had gone out the room to make this phone call. So she comes back into the room and basically says, oh, can I talk to you? And, you know, she said, I've spoken to your mum and your mum doesn't want you home, so therefore you're homeless. This lady had just said I was homeless and she walked out. She was even talking to me about the fact that I'd have to go to the council the next morning and I'd have to declare myself as completely homeless and having nothing. But for tonight, I would have no help. And I was almost like, you know, I didn't know how to do this. I was so upset because I was like, my mum wouldn't do that. And in the front of my mind, I know my mum wouldn't do that. But this worker kept saying to me, well, you're homeless. And she kept like, it was almost a braggy kind of way that she came across. So that is the end of today's video. If you have liked this video, then please give it a like and a comment down below saying what you found the most shocking or what you can relate to. And as I said, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, but I shall see you in my next video. Bye.
Just like you're young again, no, don't you cry. Just get back up again.